Welcome to Eternal Dread, where fear never sleeps. Tell us where you're watching from and what time it is, because terror has no limits. If you're brave enough, share and comment, but beware, something might be watching you too. Now, turn off the lights and let the dread begin. It started with an ad, a stupid, bizarre ad that popped up as I was mindlessly scrolling one night. Get revenge on anyone for just $49.95 plus taxes. Results guaranteed. The image above it was weird. A grainy, low-resolution photo of a cake, lopsided and half-frosted, sitting in the middle of a dimly lit room. There were no candles, no decorations, just a single, tiny knife stuck in the center, like someone had tried to cut a slice but given up halfway. Below it, in bold red letters, "Start your 7-day plan today." I laughed. Then I clicked. I skimmed the fine print. Something about escalating consequences and a series of pranks over 7 days to the nominated victim. Finality of contract. One line caught my eye. Recipient must be personally known to the sender. This includes in-person acquaintances, direct online communication, or individuals whose written words the sender has read. Weird wording, but I barely paid attention. When I reached the section where I had to type in a name, I hesitated. It felt childish, but Megan was the obvious choice. Best friend since high school. More like best tormentor. She had spent years making sure I always felt less than. Every insult disguised as a joke. Every eye roll when I spoke. Every time she forgot to invite me somewhere, only to tell me later, "Oh, I just assumed you wouldn't want to come." Still, something about actually typing her name felt final. As if I somehow knew that once I did this, I couldn't go back. I clicked submit. Nothing happened. No confirmation email. No pop-ups. Just silence. I rolled my eyes and went to bed, convinced I'd just wasted my money. The next day, Megan fell down a flight of stairs between classes. She broke her wrist and sprained her ankle. I overheard her telling our friend group that she swore someone pushed her, but there was no one there. At first, I laughed it off. Megan was always dramatic. But later, alone in my dorm, a strange unease crept in. I did this. Didn't I? No, of course not. It was just a coincidence, right? The day after, Megan's car swerved off the road. She said the brakes wouldn't work. The mechanic found nothing wrong. Thankfully, she wasn't seriously hurt, but she was badly shaken. I couldn't shake the heavy, sinking feeling in my gut. This was exactly what the ad promised. By day 3, Megan showed up to class wearing long sleeves. In the middle of a lecture, she pushed them up absent-mindedly, and I saw it. Deep, jagged scratches covering her arms. I couldn't stop staring, like something had clawed her in her sleep. She caught me looking. "I don't know what's happening," she muttered. I think I might be losing my mind." Her voice was different. Small. Scared. I wanted to tell her I was sorry, but I wasn't sure who I'd be apologizing to, her or myself. Day 4. I passed by her dorm, and the door was open. People were gathered around, whispering. I peeked inside. Liar. Thief. The words were spray-painted across the walls, in jagged, erratic lines. Her roommate swore Megan hadn't left her bed all night. The door had been locked from the inside. Day 5, it was during class. Megan coughed, then choked, then vomited. Teeth. Not her own, her mouth was still full. But these were yellowed, broken, crumbling, like they had been ripped from dozens of different people. She screamed. I nearly did too. That night, I sat awake, staring at my laptop, shaking. What the hell had I done? On the 6th day, Megan didn't come to class. When I finally saw her, she was hunched in the common room, rocking back and forth, eyes darting to things no one else could see. Her hair had turned white in patches. She smelled like something rotting. She didn't speak. I don't think she could anymore. Day 7. They found her in the dorm showers, curled in the corner, her mouth locked open in a silent scream. No one could explain how the water had been running hot enough to boil skin from bone. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. I couldn't breathe. This was my fault. I checked my bank statement, my stomach twisting. The charge from the website was still pending, but now it had a note next to it. Payment in progress. Please nominate the next recipient. I clicked the transaction. A web page loaded. You must nominate someone. 7 days will begin again. If no name is submitted, the cycle will revert to the original sender. I felt cold all over. No. No, no, no. I shut my laptop, my heart slamming against my ribs. But the next morning, I woke up with a scratch across my stomach. Not just a scratch, letters. Tick-tock. It was happening to me. I panicked. I had to pick someone. I wasn't ready to die. Megan wasn't the only one who had made my life hell. What about Olivia? She laughed at Megan's jokes. She made plenty of her own. I typed in Olivia's name. The cycle began again. I watched in horror as Olivia suffered. It started small like Megan's had, a bad fall, weird scratches. Then it escalated. By day 5, she was pulling long strands of black hair from her throat, sobbing. By day 7, she was gone. But the cycle didn't stop. Another charge appeared on my account. Another demand. Next recipient required. I ran out of mean girls. Then I nominated a professor who humiliated me in front of the whole class. Then a barista who sneered at me when I fumbled my order. Then a roommate from high school. Each time, the cycle restarted. Each time, I had to watch as someone else unraveled. Teeth falling out, fingers bending backwards, rotting smells that clung to them even after they scrubbed their skin raw. Every death felt heavier, every choice felt worse. And then, I ran out of names. I stared at the empty box on the website. My hands shook. I knew what would happen if I didn't submit a name. The cycle would revert to me. I tried entering celebrities, strangers, politicians. It rejected them. The recipient must be personally known to the sender. This includes in-person acquaintances, direct online communication, or individuals whose written words the sender has read. My breath caught in my throat. There was no one left. And now it's day 6. I wake up covered in scratches, my reflection whispering things I don't understand. I feel something watching me from the corner of every room. The floorboards creak when no one is there. I know what's waiting for me tomorrow. I have one day left, and I have no one else to choose but you. For several years, I worked as a call center agent. I spent my days calling people, trying to sell them various things. I'm sure all of you have received this kind of call at least once in your lives. A telephone operator, for example, trying to sell you a mobile plan. Let's be honest, we could all do without these calls. We've all felt that urge, myself included before I switched sides, to tell the guy or gal trying to push their offer to get lost. Very often, the person on the other end doesn't even have time to finish their introductory sentence before we've already hung up or blurted out, "I'm not interested, goodbye." I couldn't stand those kinds of calls. Then one day I received a job offer to become the guy who calls people all day. When I took my first calls, I realized something. Many people seem unaware that a human being is calling them. It's as if they think we're soulless, heartless robots incapable of feeling any emotion. I do exactly as I'm told. I follow the script given to me, and I don't decide whom I should or shouldn't call. As a result, I often got shut down, and not always very politely. That wasn't the only downside of the job. It was repetitive, too. We kept saying the same thing over and over, and the days were long. There were, however, some positives. Whenever I managed to sell a subscription to someone I didn't even know from Adam to Eve, I must admit I was filled with a sense of pride. That didn't completely erase the inconveniences, but over time I got used to it. I had developed my little routines. Then, one day, a phone call turned my life upside down. This was about a year ago. That call terrified me. I lost sleep for several weeks. I had already encountered my share of oddities during my many years of loyal service at the call center. But this time, I was seriously freaked out, to the point that for the first time in my career, I had to take several weeks off on sick leave. I was traumatized. It was a Friday, nearly at the end of my shift. It must have been around 7:30 p.m. We were nearing the end of our call list, so there were a lot of answering machines and quite a bit of waiting time between calls. I'd been waiting for 3 minutes when a new contact finally appeared. I began as usual. "Hello, this is Max from sales." The man on the other end of the phone interrupted me, telling me to stop immediately. Up to that point, nothing unusual. This happens often. I paused for a second to listen to what he had to say. Usually, people who say that go on to complain either about the calls or to insist that they aren't interested. But this time, he said nothing. I could only hear his heavy breathing. So I continued. "I'm calling you too." "Shut up, Max." My irritation began to mount. It was the end of the day, and although I was used to rude people, this was really getting on my nerves. You have to understand that as call center agents, we have strict guidelines, not to talk down to our clients. And no matter what they say, we're supposed to remain polite and courteous. So even though I felt like telling that idiot to get lost, I simply replied, "Sir, I apologize if..." He cut me off again. Stop calling me Max. I don't like it. Sir, it's an automated system calling you. Perhaps you received a call from one of my colleagues. No, I know it's you calling me all the time, Max. While speaking and listening to him, I checked the call history. I began to feel uneasy. He was right, it was always my name on the record. I had always sent him to voicemail. He had never answered before. This was the first time. To you, it might not seem strange at all, but I assure you it wasn't normal that I was always the one reaching this guy. On a call platform, there are several teams. In mine there were nearly 20 people. The calls are distributed randomly by software among the available agents. Logically, my name shouldn't have been the only one showing up in the history. The system had already called him 8 times that month, and it was always me who got through, never one of my colleagues. I tried to reassure myself by thinking that perhaps the software was malfunctioning. It wouldn't have been the first time. The fact that my name appeared systematically must have been a bug. And the guy had no way of knowing that. The same number was always calling him, and that annoyed him. He wasn't singling me out specifically. If we contact you, it's because... He interrupted me once more. I told you to shut up, Tom. I was stunned. Max is just a pseudonym I use among many others. My real name is Tom. How could he know that? I'm Max, sir. I tried to control my voice. I didn't want to let on how disturbed I was. No, you're Tom, and you keep calling me. I don't like it. I'll make sure this never happens again. I wasn't quite sure I understood what he meant, whether he was actually threatening me. My eyes were fixed on his name as I tried to recall if I recognized it from somewhere, or if it wasn't just a bad joke from a friend who recognized my voice. But no matter how hard I looked, his name was completely unknown to me. He continued, I know you call me from a call center in northern England. That was true too, but I tried to console myself by thinking that northern England was vague, and to my knowledge, several companies work in telemarketing. Except then he gave me the exact city and the name of the company where I worked. He even detailed my work schedule. I was supposed to be off the following Thursday, and he told me he would find me then. All I wanted to do was hang up. But you're not allowed to hang up on a customer. I still tell myself that if I had hung up, no one would have blamed me. It was an exceptional case. Instead, I sat there like an idiot, eyes glued to the computer, continuing to listen. I'll make you stop harassing people. Your navy blue scarf will be very useful to shut your big mouth. Then he hung up. I was paralyzed. Needless to say, I was indeed wearing a navy blue scarf. I sat there doing nothing for a good 5 minutes, my hands trembling. My colleagues noticed that something was wrong and asked what was happening. Since the calls were recorded, my supervisor listened to the conversation. I still hoped it was a joke, that my boss would say, "It's nothing, don't worry." But instead, I saw him break down as the recording played. The police were contacted. I was interrogated to confirm that I truly didn't know who my caller was. An investigation took place, and afterward I refused to go back to work. My doctor put me on sick leave. I was placed under police surveillance, especially on that infamous Thursday when the man said he'd find me. Nothing happened that day, nor on the following days. The investigation led nowhere. They never managed to track down the guy. The number I'd been calling was no longer in service, and the name didn't match any current or former customer of the operator I worked for. Even now, I have no idea who that man was. I had to take medication to calm myself down. I was so stressed. I was forced to take sleeping pills just to get some rest. I kept having the same nightmare, the guy breaking into my home to kill me. Several weeks later, I managed to pull myself together and went back to work. I could have changed jobs. I might even have needed to change then, but I don't have any qualifications, and I really didn't know what else I could do. The first day, and even the first week, went about normally. I was still anxious, but to a lesser degree than during my sick leave. Then after several weeks, I had nearly recovered from that horrible experience. 2 months later, I was moved to a different shift, which meant I would be working for another operator. After a few days of training with new colleagues, we set off to make calls. 2 weeks after that, the nightmare began again. Around 6 p.m., a new contact appeared. It was under a woman's name. I began my pitch, and this time I was using the pseudonym Alex. There was a sigh on the other end of the line. Nothing unusual. This sort of thing happens quite often. I continued, presenting the purpose of my call. Fiber had been installed in her town. "Is that you again, Tom?" It was the same voice as before. I was petrified, unable to move or utter a word. How is it that I kept getting this psycho? It wasn't the same name, I was sure of it. I had been traumatized enough not to forget it. He continued, I missed our appointment. You were too surrounded. For a brief moment, I even considered being lenient. But you've called me 6 times now, Tom. I'm not going to let this slide. See you soon. He hung up. I checked the call history, and once again he was right. I had called him 5 times before today, and I had always sent him straight to voicemail. The nightmare was repeating itself. I reported it again to my superiors, and another investigation took place. But unsurprisingly, it led nowhere. It was impossible to trace this man. That very day, I decided to quit. I never set foot in a call center again. Weeks and months passed. I found a job as a sales clerk in a shop. I thought I was finally done with all that when one day a blocked number called my cell phone. I answered automatically. Don't think I've forgotten you, Tom. Nice leather jacket. It was him. I hung up immediately. He didn't try to call back. I thought I was going to faint from terror. How had he gotten my cell number? The most terrifying part was that I actually did own a leather jacket. He was out there somewhere, and he was watching me. I looked around. There were people everywhere. I was in a shopping mall, but no one seemed to be staring or watching me. I blended into the crowd, and once outside the mall, I ran to the nearest police station. I figured that if I ran fast enough, no matter where that guy was, I'd manage to shake him off. Once again, the police were of no help. It was impossible to trace the call. Of course. After that, I changed my number and even moved to another region, hoping that would be enough to escape that lunatic. I have panic attacks every time my phone rings. For a while, I even considered giving up having a cell phone altogether. It has been 5 months since that last call. Nothing has happened since. I keep trying to convince myself it was just a tasteless joke. Having changed my number and moved, I tell myself there's no way for that guy to find me. And yet, I'm writing all of this today because I need help. For the past 2 hours, my cell phone hasn't stopped ringing. It's a blocked number, and I'm too scared to answer. It's the middle of the night, and I'm too afraid to leave my home. I'm sure it's him, and that he's watching me from somewhere. Child abuse. Post by you/throwaway father. Hello Reddit. I, 36M, am a newly single father, as my dearest wife had passed away. I am here to ask for help, for I am concerned for my daughter, 15F. She recently started to behave how my wife usually behaves. Slowly, she changed her ways of walking, talking, doing chores. Heck, when she sometimes cooks, the dishes taste exactly how my wife does it. I've asked relatives, other online strangers, my brother, who is a therapist, and they've all said that it's her own way of coping, and I should give her the time she needs to heal. Relevant comments. Commenter. It can be her own little way of coping and grieving your wife's death, but it does seem weird on the dish part. Does your wife keep any cooking recipe journal? OP. Nope, she simply remembers the recipe. Update 1. Not sure if this is the right place to update, but here we go. As much as I want this update to be sunshine and rainbows, it isn't. Her condition became more severe. She's now slapping me so hard that it's leaving a deep red mark for hours, for no reason whatsoever, and berates me constantly. Please help. Relevant comments. Commenter. From your last post, you stated that she is starting to act like your wife. Was your wife abusive? If so, did your daughter witness her being abusive to you? OP. I cannot discuss that. Commenter. You are purposely leaving out information. I feel there is more than what meets the eye. Second update. First of all, thank you for the overwhelming amount of support I've received. I tried to do what you've all suggested, but none worked. She's now locking herself constantly in her room, screaming. I am not only worried for her, but because of her screaming, neighbors are now calling the police on me, suspecting I'm abusing her, though they were proven false immediately. Please help. Relevant comments. Commenter. So you said she was behaving how your wife acted, right? Does your wife do this back then? Did she witness it? More importantly, if my first question is correct, what was the reason as to why she screamed? OP. I cannot discuss this. Commenter. You've said this multiple times to comments that ask questions that are against you. You're hiding something, right? Third update. I am here to answer questions and give an update. First, no, I am not abusive. No more questions about that. Second, she is not abusive. That's all. My daughter's condition worsened. She is now laying in bed, not moving an inch. If I try to move her, she'll return back to her bed by midnight. She looks so fucking lifeless, I can't fucking take it anymore. I need someone to help me right now. Relevant comments. Commenter. I'm not religious, but I fear some entity has possessed your daughter. and I believe the said entity is your deceased wife. That could explain why your daughter started to act the way your wife acts. Though there's one question I have, and it's why your wife is torturing you and your daughter. Did something happen between you three? Opie, no. She is not possessed by any spirits. She is especially not possessed by my fucking wife. Do not fucking bring that topic up again. Commenter. GNG, you killed her. BRJS admit. OP. Fuck you. Fourth update. I can't fucking take it anymore. This shit has been overwhelming me. I killed my wife. Is that the answer you wanted? Are you fucking satisfied? Don't even fucking start in the comments, you psychopath. Because I had good reason. One fucking night. A few fucking hours I spent with her best friend, and suddenly I'm the evil one? Just because I want new experiences, suddenly I'm the villain? She can lock herself in our bedroom, doing whatever bullshit for a week. But I can't lock her in the basement for a day. I've spent every fucking minute of my life in this family. I put a roof on top of our heads and food in our stomachs. And I can't even do shit. Relevant comments. Commenter, the fuck? You are not only deranged for killing your wife and posting it online, but you expect us to side with you? You expect us to believe your reasons are good enough for you to kill her? What the fuck? Final update. My daughter woke up one day hysterical. I thought she was cured, but no. She started screaming at me that I killed her mother, and was threatening to call the police if I ever laid one finger on her. I tried to calm her down, but nothing worked. So, I grabbed the nearby beer bottle and smashed it onto her head, hoping it'll knock her out and maybe give her the time she needs to think straight. She is not waking up. It's been 2 days since the incident, and she hasn't woken up. I don't want to call emergency services because I'll be in trouble. Please help. Self-harm. It started 2 days ago. I live with my best friend, Aaron. We've been roommates for 2 years, and despite our occasional arguments over dirty dishes and stolen Wi-Fi, we get along fine. Or at least, we did, until I found him dead in his room. I didn't even mean to walk in. His door was slightly open, and I just happened to glance inside while passing by. That's when I saw him. Aaron was sprawled across his bed, one leg bent at an awkward angle, his arm dangling off the edge. His face was pale, no, not just pale gray. His eyes were half open, glassy, unfocused. His lips were cracked and tight, pulled back slightly from his teeth. It looked like he had been dead for hours, maybe even a day. The air in the room was thick, rotten, like something wet and meaty left out in the sun too long. I gagged immediately, slapping a hand over my nose. My brain stuttered, trying to process what the fuck I was seeing. Aaron's dead. I'm looking at his corpse. And then, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I jumped so hard I nearly tripped over my own feet. My hands were shaking as I pulled it out. It was a text. From Aaron. Aaron, hey man, can you grab some eggs on your way home? I stared at the screen. The room felt like it was closing in around me. Aaron's fucking dead. My eyes flicked back to the bed. His body was still there. Still unmoving. Still bloated and starting to fucking stink. Another message came in. Aaron, dude? You good? My stomach twisted. My pulse slammed against my skull. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. I forced my legs to move, stumbling backward out of the room. I slammed the door shut behind me, my breath coming in ragged gasps. This isn't real. But the smell. The fucking smell. I nearly threw up right there in the hallway. My phone buzzed again. Aaron, you're acting weird. Just answer me, man. I turned and ran. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him. Saw his stiff, twisted body. Saw those half-lidded eyes staring at nothing. And yet, my phone kept buzzing. Aaron, why are you ignoring me? Aaron, come on man, this isn't funny. Aaron, if you're mad, just say it. I turned my phone off. I couldn't fucking deal with this. But I could still hear it. A buzzing sound. A notification ping. My phone was off. But the messages kept coming. Somewhere around 3 a.m., I heard it. A creak. A slow, deliberate shift of weight. Coming from his room. I lay in bed, frozen, my breath locked in my throat. He's dead. He's fucking dead. Another creak. This time, it was closer to the door. And then, a soft tap 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 against my wall. Right next to my fucking head. I didn't sleep. By the next morning, I had a plan. I was going to call the cops. Report a fucking corpse. I made coffee, hands still shaking, stomach twisted in knots. The apartment smelled worse now, like the stench had soaked into the walls, into my fucking skin. And then I heard something that nearly made my heart stop. The sound of the shower running. I turned the corner slowly, like if I moved too fast, I'd shatter reality itself. The bathroom door was shut. Steam curled out from underneath. And then, I heard humming. Aaron. Humming. I took a step forward, pulse pounding in my ears. Aaron! My voice cracked. The humming stopped. For a long, horrible second, there was nothing. Just the sound of the water running. And then, Aaron, yeah? I turned, bolted for the front door. I was halfway out when my phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't want to look, but I had to look. A text. From Aaron. Aaron, where are you going? I ran. I stayed at a motel that night. I didn't care how much it cost. I locked the door, put a chair against it, and kept every light on. At 2:47 a.m., my phone buzzed again. I almost didn't check, but something in me, a deep, gnawing dread, forced me to look. Aaron, you can't ignore me forever. I swallowed hard. My fingers trembled over the screen. And then another text came in. This one with an image attachment. I shouldn't have opened it. I know I shouldn't have opened it, but I did. The picture was dark, grainy, like it had been taken in a dimly lit room. But I recognized it immediately. It was my fucking motel room. A photo taken from just outside the window. I turned immediately, my heart seizing in my chest. I threw open the curtains. Nothing. Just darkness. An empty parking lot. And then, a knock at the door. I couldn't breathe. Another knock. Then, a text. Aaron, open the door, man. No fucking way. No fucking way. I backed away, my entire body trembling. I could hear something now, something wet. Something breathing. I pressed my back against the far wall. Another knock. Harder this time. Aaron, I know you're in there. And then, the door handle started to turn. I don't know what happens next. I don't know if I'll make it. But if you're reading this, if you ever find yourself in this situation, don't fucking answer the door. Blood made for poured glue, but they'd run out of options. Lieutenant Ravi Cohen wiped his brow, smearing red across his forehead without noticing. He hadn't slept in 3 days. His left eye twitched constantly now, a nervous tick that worsened whenever the scintilla probed the perimeter. His fingernails were torn to bloody stumps from where he'd been clawing at his own arms when nobody was watching. The east barricade's collapsing, he reported to Captain Rodriguez, his voice cracking from exhaustion. We've reinforced it with debris from the med center, but it won't hold another assault. Rodriguez nodded, her face a mask of fatigue. The stimulants had run out yesterday, and withdrawal symptoms hammered her nervous system. Every sound was either unbearably sharp or distantly muffled. The screams in her memory had become constant background noise. What about the civilians? She asked. 58 made it to the central hub, Cohen replied. Mostly wounded. The rest? He trailed off, the implication clear. It had been 2 days since the scintilla emerged from the trilene. 2 days of desperate retreat, falling back position by position until all that remained was the colony's central hub. The final transport had managed to launch during the initial assault, carrying away the lucky few who'd already boarded. For those who remained, luck had run out entirely. Captain, we need to talk about supplies. Cohen lowered his voice. Med center's down to nothing. No pain meds, no antibiotics, no clean bandages. What are we using now? Rodriguez asked, though she already knew the answer. Whatever we can find. Civilian clothing. Bedsheets. And for the barricades. Cohen's eye twitched violently. We're using the dead. Or parts of them, at least. Rodriguez didn't flinch. They'd crossed the line into the unthinkable days ago. Do what you have to, she said. Cohen nodded, then hesitated. There's something else. Some of the militia found CDF personnel hoarding anti-scintilla meds. The kind that delay conversion if you're infected. 3 soldiers were executed for attempted desertion when they tried to flee with the supplies. Cohen's face was carefully blank. Sergeant Vasquez gave the order. Rodriguez felt too numb to be shocked. Integration between the Colonial Defense Force and Powell's local militia had been fraught from the start. Now, with Powell missing and presumed dead, the chain of command was fracturing under pressure. I'll talk to Vasquez, she said. There's more. The med team examining the bodies found something. The anti-scintilla meds, they don't work. They're placebos. Somebody high up knew the real thing was too expensive to waste on frontier colonies. Rodriguez absorbed this news with a dull, distant anger. One more betrayal from Earth to add to the growing list. Keep that quiet, she ordered. The people have enough to fear without knowing even our medicines are lies. A distant explosion shook the building, sending dust cascading from the ceiling. "They're starting another push," Cohen said, checking his rifle. "East side again." As Cohen hurried away, Rodriguez caught sight of her reflection in a shattered window. Her face was gaunt, streaked with grime and blood. Her eyes looked like those of a stranger, hollow and haunted. She barely recognized herself anymore. But then, no one here was who they'd been 3 days ago. The western barricade was a grotesque construction of furniture, mining equipment, and human remains. Limbs jutted from between table legs, a macabre reinforcement that nobody wanted to acknowledge. The smell was overwhelming, but after a while the brain simply shut down that particular input. Petra Volkov stood guard, her mechanical breathing apparatus hissing rhythmically. The former miner's lungs had been scarred by radiation years ago, leaving her dependent on the device. Its filters were failing now, and the wet sound of her breathing suggested infection was setting in. "Any movement?" Rodriguez asked, joining her at the makeshift gun port. "Nothing for an hour," Volkov replied, her voice distorted by the breathing mask. "They're focused on the east side, probing for weakness, or creating a distraction." Volkov nodded. "I've been thinking the same." She paused, a wheezing cough racking her body. "The tunnels. We could use the mining tunnels to evacuate the civilians." Rodriguez had considered this. "You know those tunnels? How far do they extend?" "Far enough. They reach the old northern mining complex. It's sealed off, but it's defensible." Volkov's eyes, the only visible part of her face above the breathing mask, held a grim certainty. "I buried my children there after the collapse last year. I know every passage." Rodriguez weighed their options. The central hub was a death trap. They all knew it. The Scintilla were simply toying with them, testing their defenses before the final push. How many people could safely navigate the tunnels? With proper guidance? Maybe 30. Volkov's mechanical breath hissed. "But we'd need someone who knows the way. Someone who can function in low oxygen conditions." The implication was clear. Volkov was offering herself. "Your breathing apparatus has about 6 hours of oxygen left," Volkov finished. "Maybe less. I'm dying anyway, Captain." Before Rodriguez could respond, a commotion erupted from the civilian area. Angry shouts escalated into what sounded like a physical confrontation. "Stay here," she ordered Volkov. "I'll check it out." The civilian section of the hub was crowded with the wounded and terrified. Families huddled together on makeshift bedding, children staring with vacant eyes that had seen too much horror. At the center of the confrontation stood the Vasquez family. Father Carlos missing 3 fingers from an industrial accident, Mother Maria heavily pregnant, and 10-year-old Zoe silent and pale beside them. "They're infected," a militia soldier shouted, weapon pointed at Carlos. "We found conversion markers in their blood." "That's a lie," Carlos Vasquez protested, positioning himself in front of his wife and daughter. "We passed the screening." Sergeant Vasquez, no relation to the family, stood with his squad, his face hard. "The screening was incomplete. We've developed better tests since then." Rodriguez pushed through the gathering crowd. "What's happening here, Sergeant?" "Routine check turned up anomalies, Captain," Vasquez reported. "The father's blood shows early-stage scintilla markers. Protocol says we isolate them." "We ain't infected," Carlos insisted. "Maria's due any day now. We can't be separated." Rodriguez looked at young Zoe, who stared back with vacant eyes. The child hadn't spoken since the initial attack. She'd witnessed her entire class being harvested for biomass when the Scintilla overran the school. "Have you confirmed this with medical?" Rodriguez asked. "Doc Kuznetsov verified it herself," Vasquez replied. "Said the markers were faint but present." Rodriguez made a decision. Put them in separate isolation. Keep the family together, but away from the general population. Post a guard. "Captain, with all due respect, protocol says." "I don't give a damn about protocol," Rodriguez cut him off. "We're not separating a family unless we have proof of active conversion. That's final." "Routine check turned up anomalies, Captain," Vasquez reported. "The father's blood shows early-stage scintilla markers. Protocol says we isolate them." "We ain't infected," Carlos insisted. "Maria's due any day now. We can't be separated." Rodriguez looked at young Zoe, who stared back with vacant eyes. The child hadn't spoken since the initial attack. She'd witnessed her entire class being harvested for biomass when the Scintilla overran the school. "Have you confirmed this with medical?" Rodriguez asked. "Doc Kuznetsov verified it herself," Vasquez replied. "Said the markers were faint but present." Rodriguez made a decision. Put them in separate isolation. Keep the family together, but away from the general population. Post a guard. Captain, with all due respect, protocol says. I don't give a damn about protocol. Rodriguez cut him off. We're not separating a family unless we have proof of active conversion. That's final. Sergeant Vasquez's jaw tightened, but he nodded sharply. Yes, Captain. As the family was escorted to isolation, Maria Vasquez caught Rodriguez's arm. Thank you, she whispered. But if Carlos turns, if he changes, promise you'll end it quick. Don't let Zoe see what happens. Rodriguez met her eyes. I promise. As she turned back toward the command area, Rodriguez spotted Dr. Elena Kuznetsov emerging from the makeshift medical bay, a pistol holstered at her hip. The doctor's white coat was stained with blood and other fluids, her face a mask of clinical detachment that barely concealed her exhaustion. Doctor, Rodriguez called. A word. Kuznetsov approached, eyeing the retreating Vasquez family. The father's infected. Early stage, but progressing. You're certain? As certain as I can be with the equipment we have left. We've got 27 wounded who won't survive the night. I've been using harvested cinchilla toxins for euthanasia. We ran out of painkillers yesterday. Rodriguez didn't question the ethics of mercy killing. They were long past such considerations. I need to know how many of our people might be in early conversion stages, she said. Kuznetsov's laugh held no humor. All of us probably. The air, the water, everything's contaminated. It's just a matter of how quickly it progresses in each individual. Then why single out the Vasquez family? The doctor hesitated. The child, Zoe. She's showing unusual resistance. Her blood work is completely clean despite prolonged exposure during the school incident. Kuznetsov lowered her voice. I think the Cinchilla are deliberately avoiding her conversion because they're studying her immunity. And you think they're using her father as a vector? It's a possibility. The Cinchilla are adaptive. They observe, learn, reconfigure their approach. Kuznetsov touched her holstered pistol unconsciously. We should study the child. Her immunity might be our only hope. Rodriguez felt a chill. She's a 10-year-old girl who's already seen her classmates harvested, doctor. Not a lab rat. In case you haven't noticed, Captain, we've all become lab rats in the Cinchilla experiment. Kuznetsov's eyes hardened. At least this way, her suffering might have purpose. Before Rodriguez could respond, Lieutenant Cohen's voice crackled over her comm. Captain, Eastern Barricade is breached. They're using converted colonists as shields. Rodriguez turned and ran, leaving the doctor and her chilling pragmatism behind. The scene at the Eastern Barricade defied description. The Cinchilla had found a new tactic, one that struck at the defenders' last remnants of humanity. They were using partially converted colonists as living shields, pushing them ahead of their warrior forms. Men, women, and children, people who had once been neighbors and friends to the defenders, stumbled forward with vacant eyes and twisted limbs. Behind them loomed the massive warrior forms, using the converted humans as cover. Hold your fire, Rodriguez ordered as she reached the barricade. They're still human. A militia soldier turned to her with wild eyes. Look at them, Captain. Really look. She did. The colonist's skin had taken on a waxy, translucent quality. Some had additional limbs sprouting from their torsos. Others moved with jerky, puppet-like motions. But their faces remained human, their eyes pleading. Help us, one woman called out, her voice overlaid with a strange harmonic. Please, we're still here. We can feel everything. Don't shoot, a man begged, even as tentacle-like appendages writhed from his back. My daughter's in there. Please don't shoot. The defenders hesitated, rifles wavering. It's a trick, Cohen insisted, his eye twitching violently. They're already gone. I know those people, another defender protested. That's Jim Miller from hydroponics. And that's Sarah from community planning. Rodriguez made the hardest decision of her life. Fire, she ordered quietly. Fire on anything that approaches the barricade. For one terrible moment, no one moved. Then Cohen raised his rifle and shot the nearest converted colonist in the head. The body dropped, revealing a warrior form that immediately surged forward. The battle erupted in full force. Rodriguez grabbed a rifle from a fallen defender and joined the line, firing methodically at the approaching horde. Each squeeze of the trigger sent another former colonist to the ground. Each face that disappeared from her sight burned itself into her memory. They're breaking through, someone shouted as a section of the barricade collapsed. 3 warrior forms pushed through the gap, their massive bodies dwarfing the human defenders. One swung a limb tipped with bone-like blades, decapitating 2 militia soldiers in a single motion. Rodriguez emptied her rifle into the creature's torso, aiming for what appeared to be vital organs embedded in its carapace. The warrior staggered but didn't fall. "Incendiary rounds," Cohen shouted, tossing her a magazine with red-marked shells. She loaded them with practiced speed, then fired again. This time, the rounds ignited on impact, setting the warrior's biological components ablaze. It let out a high-pitched shriek that hurt the ears, then collapsed in a burning heap. The other warriors fell back temporarily, dragging more converted colonists into position as shields. "We can't hold this position," Cohen said, reloading his own weapon. "We need to fall back to the inner hub." Rodriguez knew he was right. The eastern barricade was lost. "Give the order. Controlled retreat to fallback position 3. And Cohen, yeah, burn everything we leave behind. Don't give them anything to use." As defenders began to pull back in an orderly fashion, Rodriguez noticed something disturbing about the converted colonists still approaching the barricade. They were changing even as she watched. The conversion process was accelerating, limbs elongating, skin hardening into carapace-like segments. Whatever humanity had remained in them was being rapidly consumed. "They're adapting to our incendiary rounds," she realized aloud, developing heat resistance in real time. By the time the last defender had fallen back, the approaching colonists barely resembled humans at all. The Scintilla were learning, evolving their tactics with each engagement. And they were winning. The inner hub was the last defensible position within the colony center. Now it held the remaining defenders and civilians, fewer than 100 souls in total. Rodriguez found Dr. Mehta in what had once been the colony's communications center. The scientist had returned from his mission to the Franklin homestead, though at great cost. Half his face was burned, the skin melted and rehardened in a way that suggested Scintilla acid. "You made it back," she said, surprised. "Barely." Mehta's voice was raspier than before. "I was unable to retrieve my original research materials, but I made some discoveries at the Franklin residence." "Did you destroy the synaptic node?" "Not exactly." Mehta turned to face her fully, revealing the extent of his injuries. His left eye was completely gone, the socket sealed with something that resembled scar tissue but moved slightly, as if alive. I attempted to interface with it directly. The results were informative. Rodriguez fought the urge to step back. "You're infected." "Technically, yes, but in a controlled manner." Mehta touched the living tissue around his eye socket. "I've been injecting myself with modified Scintilla DNA for weeks, building immunity, while studying their biology from the inside." "That's insane." "Perhaps. But it's given me insight into their communication methods. I've been experiencing psychic flashes from the hive mind. I can sense the brood mother's location." Rodriguez stared at the doctor with growing horror and a faint spark of hope. "You can find the central node?" "Yes. It's established itself beneath the colony, using the mining tunnels as a foundation." Mehta grimaced as the tissue around his eye socket pulsed visibly. "The good news is that destroying it would cause temporary disruption in local Scintilla coordination. And the bad news? The tunnels are heavily guarded, and my presence seems to agitate the hive mind. I believe they can sense my attempt to retain individuality while using their biological adaptations." Rodriguez considered the implications. Petra Volkov suggested using the mining tunnels to evacuate civilians. She knows the tunnel system better than anyone. An evacuation through the tunnels would bring your people directly past the brood mother's chamber. It could provide an opportunity to strike at the heart of the local hive, or lead everyone straight to slaughter. "Yes, that's also possible." Mehta seemed unnaturally calm about the prospect. "The probability of success is quite low." A commotion from the civilian area interrupted them. Rodriguez hurried toward the sound, Mehta following more slowly. They found a circle of defenders surrounding Corporal Jean Takeda, a militia sniper with a black market targeting implant replacing her right eye. The implant glowed a sickly green, its edges red and inflamed where it joined her skin. Her left forearm was covered in notches carved directly into her flesh, kill markers, one for each confirmed Scintilla she'd eliminated. At her feet lay the body of a defender, throat slashed. "He was turning," Takeda said flatly, cleaning her knife on her pants. "I saw the signs through my targeting system. Heat signature was changing. Cellular activity accelerating." Dr. Kuznetsov pushed through the crowd and knelt beside the dead defender. She examined the body briefly, then looked up. She's right. Early stage conversion indicators. The spine was already beginning to restructure. The crowd murmured uneasily, people instinctively drawing away from each other. Fear of infection would destroy what little cohesion remained among the survivors. Takeda, come with me, Rodriguez ordered. The rest of you back to your positions. Doctor, handle the body. Burn it. She led Takeda to a quieter corner of the hub. The sniper moved with predatory grace, her augmented eye constantly scanning their surroundings. That implant, is it affecting your judgment? Rodriguez asked directly. Takeda smiled thinly. You mean am I crazy? Probably. The neural interface leaks carcinogens. I've got maybe a month before it kills me. Better than ending up as scintilla building material. I need every capable fighter, but I can't have you slitting throats based on what your implant tells you. You've seen what happens when they turn inside our perimeter. Takeda's human eye held no emotion. Would you rather wait until they're fully transformed and tearing people apart from the inside? Lieutenant Cohen approached, his face grave. Captain, we have a problem. The Vasquez family. The father's transformation has accelerated dramatically. He's requesting to speak with you before. He trailed off. Carlos Vasquez was barely recognizable. His skin had taken on a bluish tint, translucent enough that the restructuring of his internal organs was visible beneath. His missing fingers had been replaced by something that resembled thin, jointed tentacles that twitched with a mind of their own. His wife Maria sat across the room, holding Zoe protectively. The pregnant woman's eyes were red from crying, but her face showed grim resolution. Captain, Carlos rasped, his voice overlaid with clicking sounds. Thank you for coming. Mr. Vasquez, Rodriguez acknowledged, keeping her hand near her sidearm. Not much time, he continued, visibly fighting to maintain control of his own body. They're in my head, reworking my thoughts. But I can still feel myself. Is there something you wanted to tell me? Carlos nodded, the motion jerky and unnatural. They're learning from us, using our knowledge. The ones they take whole, the ones who are converted rather than just harvested, they keep our memories, our skills. We suspected as much. It's worse than you think. Carlos winced as something beneath his skin shifted visibly. They're building something, using the colonists with technical knowledge to create. I don't know what exactly, but they're very interested in our power systems, our communications technology. Rodriguez glanced at Maria and Zoe. The child stared back with those empty eyes, seeing everything yet responding to nothing. Why are they ignoring your daughter? She asked quietly. Carlos looked surprised. You noticed? They can't sense her somehow. When they took her school, the warrior forms walked right past her like she was invisible. He grimaced in pain. Maria thinks it's because of what happened during her pregnancy. The radiation exposure from the mining accident. Radiation alters DNA, Rodriguez murmured, thoughts racing. If the child was somehow invisible to scintilla detection. Captain, Carlos interrupted, his voice more urgent. I don't have much time left. When I turn, and I will turn soon, I won't be me anymore. But I'll remember everything I know about this colony, about our defenses, about Maria and Zoe. What are you asking? End it. Before I become one of them. Before they take everything I am and use it against you. His partly transformed hand reached for hers. Please, don't let Maria see what I become. Rodriguez looked at Maria, who nodded almost imperceptibly, tears streaming down her face. She had already said her goodbyes. I'll give you a moment, Rodriguez said, stepping outside where Cohen waited. Is he still coherent? The lieutenant asked. For now, but not for long. She drew her sidearm and checked the magazine. One shot left. Get Volkov. Tell her to prepare for tunnel evacuation. Priority for the civilians who can still move on their own. And find Meta. I need to know more about the child, Zoe. The mute girl? What about her? She might be our best hope for getting through the tunnels undetected. Rodriguez took a deep breath. Now give me a minute. When she returned to the isolation room, Carlos was convulsing, the transformation accelerating. His wife had moved further away, shielding Zoe's eyes from the sight of her father's metamorphosis. Maria, Rodriguez said quietly, take Zoe and go with Lieutenant Cohen. We're evacuating through the mining tunnels. What about Carlos? Maria asked, though her eyes said she already knew. I'll take care of him. That's a promise. When they were gone, Rodriguez approached Carlos, who was now curled into a fetal position, his body racked with spasms as the conversion progressed. Thank you, he managed between clicks and inhuman sounds. Rodriguez raised her pistol. I'm sorry. Don't be. Just protect them. Protect Zoe. She's special. Rodriguez squeezed the trigger. The evacuation plan came together with desperate speed. Petra Volkov would lead the civilians through the mining tunnels, aiming for the abandoned northern complex. Meta, using his disturbing connection to the hive mind, provided a crude map of scintilla concentrations to avoid. They're focused on the central hub, he explained, indicating areas on the colony schematic, particularly the eastern approaches. The western tunnel entrance should be relatively clear. Should be. Cohen's eye twitched rapidly. The hive mind is complex. I can sense general dispositions, but specific tactical deployments are harder to read. Meta touched the living tissue around his missing eye. They know I'm probing. They're adapting their communications to counter me. Rodriguez studied the tunnel layout. How long will your breathing apparatus last, Volkov? The former miner checked the gauge on her device. 4 hours, maybe less. The filters are failing. And how long to reach the northern complex? 3 hours if we move quickly. Longer with wounded and children. Rodriguez made her decision. We evacuate in 3 groups. First group, civilians who can move under their own power, led by Volkov. Second group, wounded who can be transported, with medical staff and a security detail. Third group, rear guard to hold the hub as long as possible, covering our retreat. Who takes the rear guard? Takeda asked, her augmented eye glowing in the dim light. I do, Rodriguez answered, along with any volunteers. The room fell silent. They all knew what volunteering for rear guard meant. I'll stay, Cohen said, his voice steady despite his twitching eye. Someone needs to blow the charges once everyone's clear. One by one, defenders stepped forward, a dozen in all, each accepting their fate with quiet dignity. The rest of you focus on getting the civilians out, Rodriguez ordered. Move quickly, stay quiet, and follow Volkov's lead. Actually, Captain, a new voice interrupted. Dr. Mehta won't be going anywhere. They turned to see a man in a crisp UDI uniform standing in the doorway. Despite the chaos around them, his appearance was immaculate, his posture perfect. Director Alan Moore, Earth's official representative, had finally emerged from his private quarters. Director Moore, Rodriguez acknowledged coldly. Nice of you to join us after hiding for the past 3 days. I wasn't hiding, Captain. I was awaiting the appropriate moment to implement my directives. Moore's voice was calm, almost pleasant. And that moment has arrived. What directives? Classified, I'm afraid. Moore smiled thinly. But I can tell you that Dr. Mehta and his research are priority assets. They'll be evacuated separately, under my authority. Rodriguez stared at the man in disbelief. There are no separate evacuations. We're going through the mining tunnels. It's our only option. Not quite. Moore held up a small communication device. I've been in contact with UDI Command. A priority extraction team will reach the colony within 6 hours, targeting this location specifically. Dr. Mehta's research is considered essential to the war effort. The implications struck Rodriguez like a physical blow. You knew what was happening here all along. I had my suspicions, yes. Moore's composure never wavered. This colony was positioned to monitor scintilla expansion patterns. The data we've gathered has been invaluable. Data? Cohen's voice rose in disbelief. People are dying, being turned inside out while they're still conscious. And you're collecting data? Regrettable casualties, certainly, but necessary ones. Moore turned to Mehta. Doctor, gather your research materials. The extraction team will use the landing pad on the western hub. Mehta looked uncertain, his gaze moving between Moore and Rodriguez. Captain, Volkov interrupted urgently. We need to move now. My oxygen levels are critical, and the western tunnels won't stay clear forever. Rodriguez made her decision. Everyone proceed with evacuation as planned. Director Moore, you're welcome to wait for your extraction team, but Dr. Mehta's research goes with the civilians. That's an order. You don't have the authority to. I have the only authority that matters right now. Rodriguez cut him off, drawing her sidearm. The authority of someone willing to do whatever it takes to save these people. Moore's smug expression faltered. This is mutiny, Captain. No, she replied coldly. This is survival. A distant explosion rocked the building, sending dust cascading from the ceiling. The Scintilla were making their final push against the hub's outer defenses. We're out of time, Cohen announced. Eastern barricade has fallen. They'll reach the inner doors within minutes. Move out, Rodriguez ordered. First group with Volkov now. Second group, prepare to follow in 5 minutes. Rear guard, take defensive positions. As the civilians began their desperate evacuation, Rodriguez turned to Director Moore. You have a choice. Join the evacuation, or stay for your extraction team. But Meta's research goes with us. Moore's hand moved to his jacket pocket, fingers closing around something small hidden there. I'm afraid I can't allow that, Captain. This research is classified at the highest levels. I have orders to ensure it doesn't fall into the wrong hands. Any hands, other than authorized UDI personnel. What's in your pocket, Director? Rodriguez asked, her weapon still trained on him. Insurance. Moore removed a small capsule. Poison. Fast-acting. My orders were clear. If the research couldn't be secured, it was to be destroyed. Along with anyone who had knowledge of it. Meta stepped back, clutching his data pad protectively. The implantation process, the adaptive immunity factors, they could be the key to fighting the Scintilla. Precisely why it can't fall into their hands, Moore replied. And unfortunately, Doctor, you yourself are now compromised. He gestured to Meta's partially transformed face. You're as much a research subject as a researcher now. The standoff was interrupted by a scream from the tunnel entrance. One of the civilians had collapsed, body contorting as rapid conversion took hold. Tentacles erupted from his chest, lashing out at those nearby. Takeda reacted instantly, her rifle barking 3 times. The converted civilian fell, but panic had already spread through the evacuation group. Move! Rodriguez shouted. Everyone into the tunnels now. In the chaos, Moore lunged for Meta, the poison capsule in hand. Rodriguez fired without hesitation, the bullet catching Moore in the shoulder. He stumbled backward, the capsule falling from his grasp. Get to the tunnels, she ordered Meta. Your research might be our only hope. The scientist nodded and hurried after the fleeing civilians, clutching his precious data. Moore laughed mirthlessly from where he'd fallen against the wall. You don't understand what you've done, Captain. This colony was never meant to be defended. It was bait, part of a larger strategy. What are you talking about? Population thinning, Moore said, pressing a hand to his bleeding shoulder. Earth's resources are finite. The inner colonies can't support unlimited refugees from the frontier. Some hard decisions had to be made. Rodriguez felt cold rage rising within her. So you sacrificed us, set us up as live bait to study the Scintilla. Not just study them, guide them. Moore's eyes gleamed with the fervor of a true believer. Direct their expansion away from critical systems toward expendable ones. The truth hit Rodriguez with sickening clarity. The missing defenses, the placebos instead of real anti-Scintilla medications, the delayed responses to distress calls. It was all deliberate, necessary sacrifices for the greater good. Moore reached into his other pocket and produced a second capsule. When my extraction team arrives, they'll find nothing but dead Scintilla. The colony's reactor is set to overload on my command. Before Rodriguez could stop him, Moore bit down on the capsule. His body stiffened, then went limp, a thin smile frozen on his face. Another explosion rocked the hub, closer this time. The inner doors wouldn't hold much longer. Captain, Cohen called from his position. They're breaking through. Dozens of warrior forms, and something bigger behind them. Rodriguez hurried to the barricade. Through gaps in the reinforced doors, she could see the approaching horde. The warrior forms moved with terrible purpose, but it was the shape behind them that froze her blood. A massive, pulsating creature that dwarfed even the warriors, its body a horrific amalgamation of Scintilla biology and human components. What the hell is that? Cohen whispered. A synaptic commander, Rodriguez realized. They're bringing out their heavy units. The rear guard exchanged glances, the gravity of their situation clear. None of them would survive the next few minutes. The civilians? Rodriguez asked. First group is in the tunnels with Volkov, Cohen reported. Second group following with the wounded. Meta went with them. Rodriguez made her final decision. Set the charges. 10-minute delay. Get the last civilians out, then seal the tunnel entrance. We'll hold them as long as we can. Cohen nodded, his eye twitching one last time before he steadied himself. It's been an honor, Captain. Likewise, Lieutenant. Rodriguez checked her weapon. Now let's give these bastards something to remember us by. As Cohen hurried to prepare the explosives, Rodriguez took position with the remaining defenders. The inner doors bulged inward as the warrior forms hammered against them. Incendiary rounds when they breach, she ordered. Aim for the synaptic commander if you get a clear shot. The defenders acknowledged grimly, loading special ammunition into their weapons. They were the last line between the evacuation and total annihilation. And then the doors gave way. In the mining tunnels, the evacuation proceeded in desperate silence. Petra Volkov led the way, her breathing apparatus wheezing more loudly with each passing minute. The filters were failing faster than expected, and the wetness in her lungs grew worse as they descended deeper into the earth. Behind her, 30 civilians moved in frightened silence. The Vasquez family stayed near the front, Maria's pregnant form making her movements slow and awkward. Zoe walked beside her mother, eyes vacant, still not speaking. Dr. Mehta brought up the rear of the first group, the living tissue around his eye socket pulsing in the dim light. He kept glancing behind them, as if sensing something the others couldn't perceive. "We need to move faster," he whispered to Volkov. "The hive mind is agitated. They know we're in the tunnels." "I'm going as fast as I can," Volkov rasped, her breathing growing more labored. "The main junction is half a kilometer ahead. From there, we turn north toward the abandoned complex." Mehta shook his head. "They're waiting at the junction. I can feel them." "There's no other way through," Volkov insisted. "The eastern passages collapsed last year." "Then we make a new way." Mehta tapped his data pad. "Here. This maintenance shaft runs parallel to the main tunnel. It's narrow, but it bypasses the junction." The group followed her lead, turning down a smaller side passage. The air grew thicker, heavy with moisture and the smell of decay. Back at the central hub, the final battle was reaching its crescendo. The Scintilla warrior forms had breached the inner doors, pouring into the defenders' last stronghold. Rodriguez and her rear guard fought with desperate valor, knowing each second they bought allowed more civilians to escape through the tunnels. "Eastern sector is overrun," a defender shouted over the gunfire. "They're flanking us." Rodriguez fired her last incendiary rounds into the chest of a warrior form, watching it collapse in flames. All around her, the defenders were falling, overwhelmed by superior numbers and inhuman strength. "Cohen," she called. "Status on the charges." "Armed and counting down," the lieutenant responded from his position near the tunnel entrance. 7 minutes to detonation. 7 minutes. They needed to hold for 7 more minutes, then the hub would collapse, burying the Scintilla advance force and buying the evacuation precious time. But they were running out of ammunition, out of defenders, out of options. "Fall back to the tunnel entrance," Rodriguez ordered. "Defensive circle. Protect the charges." The remaining defenders retreated in good order, forming a last line of defense near the tunnel that now carried their only hope of survival. They had perhaps 5 minutes before the charges would detonate. "Captain," Cohen said quietly as they took cover behind overturned furniture. "The wounded. They won't make it out in time." Rodriguez followed his gaze to where several critically injured defenders lay. They were too badly hurt to move, yet still conscious. "If the Scintilla reached them, we can't leave them to be converted," she said. Cohen nodded grimly. "They know it too." Indeed, the wounded had been speaking among themselves, reaching a terrible consensus. One of them caught Rodriguez's eye and nodded slowly, a silent request that needed no explanation. "Give me your sidearm," she told Cohen. "Mine's empty." He handed over his pistol without comment. Rodriguez approached the wounded, crouching beside them. "You're sure?" she asked. "We've seen what happens," one replied, her body broken but her eyes clear. "We won't become their building materials." Rodriguez nodded, understanding their choice. It was the same one she would make. "It won't hurt," she promised. "And you won't be forgotten." One by one, she granted them mercy, a swift end rather than the horror of conversion. Each shot echoed in the chaotic space, a counterpoint to the sounds of battle as the remaining defenders held the line. When it was done, she returned to the defensive position, handing the empty pistol back to Cohen. 3 minutes to detonation, he reported. "You should go, Captain. Take the tunnel while there's still time." Rodriguez shook her head. "We hold together, as long as we can." The Scintilla pressed their advantage, warrior forms advancing methodically through the hub. The synaptic commander directed their movements with terrible efficiency, using converted colonists as advanced scouts. 2 minutes, Cohen counted down. The defensive circle tightened as more defenders fell. Rodriguez found herself using a broken table leg as a makeshift weapon, having exhausted all ammunition. 1 minute. The Scintilla sensed the danger too late. The synaptic commander emitted a high-pitched keening that sent the warrior forms into a frenzy, rushing the defensive position with reckless abandon. 30 seconds. Cohen was hit by a spray of corrosive fluid, his face melting as he screamed. Rodriguez pulled him behind cover, but it was too late. His features dissolved into an unrecognizable mass, yet somehow he remained conscious, eyes pleading through the ruin of his face. "I've got you," she whispered, drawing her combat knife. "One last mercy." As Cohen's body went limp, Rodriguez realized with cold clarity that she was the last one left. All around her, her comrades lay dead or dying, and the charges were about to detonate. 10 seconds. She had no chance of reaching the tunnel in time. The Scintilla warriors closed in, their inhuman forms blocking every path of escape. 5 seconds. Rodriguez gripped her knife, raising it to her own throat. Better a quick end than conversion. Better to die human than become part of their biological machinery. 3 seconds. She pressed the blade against her skin, feeling its cold edge. The Scintilla warriors seemed to understand her intent, moving faster to stop her. 2 seconds. "For Earth," she whispered, though Earth had abandoned them. 1 second. The knife bit into her flesh just as the first warrior reached her, its clawed limb extending toward her face. 0. The world exploded in fire and darkness.